What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here from Tacomoto Co. We have the complete line of Athena GET ECUs laid out here, all the accessories and modules that date back to the 2012 Enduro KTM bikes, and the competition side would be the 2011 bikes forward. And these are every ECU and all of the accessories that go along with that system. And so we'll break this down one ECU at a time and one generation at a time. We'll start over here with the new generation SX1 ECU system. The SX1 family of devices were introduced about a year and a half ago. Tacomoto was the first in the US to get these, one of the first dealers in the world to be offered these devices. And we have such a great and robust relationship with Athena that they were willing to put our branding on the case of the devices themselves. And that's a really great honor for us to be considered such a high-level partner with them, that they do that, promote that with us and for us, and then we've played a large role in developing this product and improving as much as possible. And so you'll notice that there's a couple of green devices and then some gray. Let's talk about the green. When this was first introduced, the case was green, and on the back you'll notice that there's a sticker that indicates that this is the SX1, and then there's some TCO, that part number in there. That indicates that this is a Tacomoto version of the SX1, but it's an SX1 device. So while it was green, that lasted for that year and a half, and then they've just recently decided to change the case color. It is still a SX1, and that's the Tacomoto version right there. And so there's no difference at all between the green or the gray. They're completely the same. Now you'll notice that the Wi-Fi module has changed. The footprint is a little bit smaller. The height and thickness are the same, but they just went half size on the case, and so that's a nice upgrade. And in terms of the map switches, when it was first introduced, this was the set. So you had a map switch, a toggle map switch that was orange, and then you had the option to go with a traction control knob, and you could control the 10 levels of traction control, and Athena calls that the GPA. GPS is their designation for traction control. And so a set purchased during that time frame would look like this. You'd have these devices here, and then it would include a cable, and the cable would be to connect the CAN bus devices. This is a 4-wire harness, and these devices now run on the CAN bus protocol. And so the map switch is just a simple toggle switch, but the Wi-Fi and the traction control knob were CAN bus. And then you had, at times we were sending out either a 2-split Y cable or a 4-split Y cable. And either one, whichever one you have, the idea is that you would plug in the traction control knob here and then the Wi-Fi into this, and then plug that into the ECU. And then some of those kits even came with a little device called a T-CAN, and that was a CAN bus end of line device, and you would plug that into any spares. If you had at least one spare on your harness, you could plug that in, and your kit may or may not have had that, and you may or may not have had the 2 or the 4-wire. It just kind of depended on the timing of when you purchased that kit. And then they also may have come with this harness here, and this has a red and black wire, and this little device would plug into the ECU and would power it if you ever wanted to go into the app and to make any changes or programming modifications. You could connect this to the ECU and then to the battery, and that would just provide ECU power, and you wouldn't have to run the engine. Some bikes, the key on does not power the ECU. The engine has to be running, and so this would provide that electrical power to the ECU for any of those programming functions. And then you would remove this when you were done. So this is just a temporary connector only used for programming of the ECU. And so now that this system has been updated, we'll move some of these devices off the table. If you ordered a kit today, you'd be presented with these pieces of equipment. And the most exciting thing probably here is this SX1 controller. This is the LED map switch. This was introduced a couple of months ago, and this map switch replaces the need for the traction control knob, because authority of the traction control can now be handled in this LED map switch. This allows for you to operate through that 10 mode traction control feature, and you can toggle up and down with that map switch. So instead of using the dial knob, which was necessary before, now it's been updated and you can do that with the switch. This switch also lets you control the 2 maps. It also adds traction control, launch control, and then engine overheat temperature warning to the system. So this multi-function map switch is a tremendous leap forward and advancement in interface between the ECU system and the rider, as well as communicating some of those functions as well. You can get the system with the toggle map switch. So we offer it in either version. There's a price difference. This is less expensive. And this would be for a rider who is only interested in just switching between map 1 and map 2. On our system, the Tacomoto maps, map 1 is a full power race map. Map 2 is a single track enduro map with a very smooth throttle tip in, very, very progressive throttle feel and power delivery. It's fantastic for low traction environments, or if you're in sand, hill climbs, any of those types of situations. It does a tremendous job. So you have the chance at checkout to pick either one of the map switches, and then you'll get the Wi-Fi controller, and then this is the Y cable here, and then we talked about this just a moment ago. We'll show you how to connect this. You'll see on the ECU here that there are 3 connectors. You've got a 2-place connector here. This is for an auxiliary second fuel injector. Then you've got one here that says main, and then EXP for expander. So the main is where you would connect. See, it's the 4-wire thin plug. This is where that Y connector would go. If you're using the Y connector, you may also decide not to use it, and you could just plug that Wi-Fi directly into that. So in most instances, you're going to have the map switch as well as the Wi-Fi. So you'll plug that in. This one is going to say ECU to main. And then these 2, and it doesn't matter which one you plug into, either or, so the Wi-Fi can go in one of them, and then the map switch can go in the other. Obviously, the map switch will go up on the bars, and you've got enough length here to be able to run that up and put it on the handlebars. And then this can go under the seat, next to the battery, in the airbox. There's any number of places on different bikes where this can live. And so once that has been plugged in, that is your configuration if you're using the CAN bus map switch. Now, if you don't have that map switch, if you're not using that and you're using the standard map switch, then you wouldn't have that device. You may or may not want to use this Y cable. And then the map switch here, the toggle map switch, it has a square connector, and that's going to go into that EXP, that expansion plug. So you'd click that guy in there, and then this will run up and then go on the handlebars. And again, this just lets you toggle between the 2 maps. So you have your choice between the 2 maps. And I think, as far as I know, Tacomoto is the only Get dealer in the world to offer the ability to use either of the map switches. And then something as well that makes us pretty unique in the world is the fact that this ECU, we have backwards compatibility all the way back to the 2017 bikes. So you can add the LED multi-mode map switch with traction control and launch control and all those features to any KTM single cylinder 350 through 501. So that'd be an Austrian bike. So the Husqvarna is the 501. So gas, Husqvarna, and then KTM, Austrian produced, KTM Group dirt bikes from 2017 all the way up to current. So we're making this video in October 2024, and the 25 bikes are already rolling out. So 17 through 25 adaptability, either of the 2 map switches for any of those bikes. That's a pretty broad list of bikes that this has coverage on. Something worth pointing out with the Get ECU system is while it has all of these really high-end, high-tech, high-level features, which are amazing and class-leading, there's no other system that can do anything even remotely similar to what the Athena GET system does. You do not have to use any of these. We have riders out there who will take this ECU box and plug it in and go ride. Some don't connect the map switch. They don't connect any of the auxiliary functions. They just run this ECU. So these things come pre-programmed, ready to ride for your bike. You tell us what exhaust, what bike you have. We set it up and configure it to that machine. And you can plug that into your connector and go ride immediately. Ready to go, plug and play, as simple as that. Now, we recommend that when you set up your system, it is advisable to set and confirm the TPS value and then to set the minimum idle speed. That's what the dealer does on your new bike. That's what any other ECU system would recommend. While it is plug and play, and you can do that, we do advise that you do those other setups. And that's just basically right out of the manual. The owner's manual tells you to do the same thing on the stock ECU. So no different. But again, if you don't want to run a map switch, then don't. If you don't want to run Wi-Fi, then don't. You could leave those in the box. Again, we have plenty of riders who just put that ECU in their bike and go ride. And there are competing ECU systems that market that they're, simpler or easier to install. And that's not exactly the case for this reason. Like I said, all of these ECUs, really all the aftermarket ECUs, Vortex, AIM, the GET, they allow you, if you want, to just plug it in and go ride. You don't need to do anything further. But each of those also would advise on a complete and thorough installation that you set the idle speed and set the TPS. Something else worth pointing out is when you get a Tacomoto GET ECU system, you end up really joining our ECU family, the rider family that we have out there. And we offer lifetime hardware support, lifetime map support. We tech support not only our ECUs, but we continually and constantly are helping other ECU owners who have purchased them from other outlets. We support them. We don't ask you when you call where you got your ECU. We just work to help you solve the problem. And if you need that support, you know how to reach us. When you get a Tacomoto GET ECU system, we will remap it for you if you change from one bike to the other for the life of that unit, and it's no cost to the original purchaser. The ECU unit that was released before the SX1 was known as the RX1, and here we have all of the functions and accessories here laid out. So the RX1 ECU, it on the back, the sticker would not say that it was an SX1. Now it didn't identify itself, or it may under here, and I've got that covered with our make and model sticker. But the thing that you'll notice here is that it does not say that it's SX1 ECU, and under here I'm pretty certain that it says RX1, and on the front it will say GET, and then the Athena logo is there. So those are the hallmarks of the RX1. And the other way to tell is that both connectors are square. This one does not have that third whip, which would be that fuel injector, and some of these do, some of them don't. It doesn't really matter if yours does not, don't worry about it. That's a feature that's not typically used on KTM enduro bikes. So again, square. And then the Wi-Fi module was black, and then the traction control knob was orange. These also may have been another color. I think when they first came out, they may not have been orange. They may have been silver. So the thing, though, to note, whatever color that bracket is, the thing to note is it would be square, as opposed to on the SX1, everything is 4-pin flat, and then this is 8-pin square. That's how you know whether or not you have the SX1 versus the RX1. You had the same map switch, and it plugged into the same EXP connector here. And then the main on this unit, this is where you would plug in anything that you wanted to connect to the ECU that was part of your accessory package that had a square connector. So like if you had the Wi-Fi module, that could plug in here directly, or if you had the traction control knob, that could plug in directly. Now, you run into a problem because there's only one connector here, but there could be up to 2 devices that you'd want to share this connector with. And so you could get an accessory Y cable. So this Y splitter, this would allow you to plug into the main. So you'd connect that here, and then that gives you 2 leads out. One of them is specifically marked for the Wi-Fi comm, so that would plug into this. And then this over here is where the traction control would go. And so you'd end up with the ECU going to the main, going to the Y splitter, and then to your 2 devices over here. Now, something to point out with the RX1 is this cable was significantly thicker than it is now with the SX1. The SX1 is a 4-wire CAN bus protocol, and then this data system here used 8 wires. So this cable had it was much thicker. And just a personal note, on my own bikes, I didn't really like managing this Y splitter. It's just kind of a lot of wire there and pretty thick to put it on the bike. And so what I did on my bikes with the RX1 is I would just run the traction control knob while it was on the bike. I would mount the Wi-Fi for the RX1. I would mount that to the bike. I'd secure it to the machine, and then I would just leave the plug off. If I ever needed the Wi-Fi, then I would unplug traction, plug in the Wi-Fi, and vice versa, do what I needed to do, and then go back. And so I would just transfer between the two. But other riders wanted to have this powered up all the time, and that's, again, not a problem. You could just use that Y splitter cable. The map switch back in the day was orange. Now you can get it in gray, as noted, but it's the exact same switch. This switch is backwards and forwards compatible with all of the ECUs, all the GET ECUs, but only that LED switch is only compatible with the SX1. It has that flat 4-pin connector. And then you also had, for the RX1 system, the power cord for the ECU for programming, and it operates exactly the same on all the ECU types. Plug it in to get power while you're programming. There's one other ECU that's part of this 17 Plus. And let me point out the fact that this has the 3-row 33-pin connector. So any of the bikes, for the KTM side, it'd be the 17 Plus Enduro bikes, and then the 15.5 Factory Edition Plus competition bikes. And that 3-row 33-pin connector is what's used on those more modern. In fact, the current generation bikes use this exact same plug. So this orange one, notice that it only has one lead coming out of it. This was really marketed as like an OEM replacement ECU. It came from Athena with the map and the bike that it was specifically programmed for. It could not be reflashed. It had some limitations to its functions and capabilities, and it was at a lower cost. It was offered at a lower cost, and it wasn't particularly all that popular. You've probably never seen one before. They're a little bit rare, and it had the availability to do the same things that the RX1 did. You could plug in the Y connector. You could plug in the same black Wi-Fi module. You could plug in the traction control knob. It had the ability, no, in fact, this one did not have a map switch. So it was just, it just offered you those accessory options. So it was limited in what it did. And this one, again, is not very popular. I don't know, we never sold them, and we've never really even done anything with them. And like I said, you can't reprogram it, you can't reflash it, you can't remap it. One of the hallmarks to the SX1 and the RX1 is the ability to take that ECU and then flash it. That particular box works with a lot of the late model Yamaha, Kawasaki's, Hondas, and KTM bikes, so it's a pretty universal piece of hardware. This was not. This ECU here is known as the RX1 Evo, and notice it has a wider connector, and that has a double row of pins. And this was for, on the KTM side, this was for the 12 through 16 enduro bikes, and then competition, it would be the 11 through 15.5 factory edition bikes and everything in between on the competition side. And this ECU had the ability to run the same accessories that the RX1 did. I forgot to put the RX1 traction control knob in there. So this one could plug into the Y cable. You could plug the Wi-Fi into the Y cable. That would go into the ECU. And then this one did have the ability to plug a map switch in. This unit here, we still sell this, and supplies are running out. We use this on the 12 through 16 KTM 500, and then on the Husqvarna side, the 501 12 through, be the 14 through 16 on the Husqvarna side. And it had the same connector here, same cord for plugging in for the power. This is running out. This has been discontinued, and so supplies are dwindling, and when these are sold out, then that's going to be a retired unit. But this allowed you to have this suite of features and functions on that generation of bike. One other accessory that is not that common, definitely not on the enduro side, this is more of a motocross item. This is called the LCGPA. It's a little device that lives on the front fender, and if you've seen the Lawrence brothers on American Honda and Supercross, they also use the GET ECU system and the technology, and you'll see this little device on their front fender of their Hondas. And what it does is it allows for control and management of the launch control, the traction control system, and then it gives you the ability to have a engine overheat temperature warning light on there as well. And how you could manage that is there's a little push button here that would mount on the bars, so you could toggle through setting up those functions and features. And it's widely used and adapted by those Supercross guys. So, you know, one of the reasons why the Lawrence brothers have had such great success, besides the fact that they're on a Honda, which in the last 2 years has been a dominant machine, and then they're just incredible, you know, once in a generation riders, but they've also been using the best tech available. And so this entire GET ECU system suite really represents the cutting edge. Athena is on the cutting edge of ECU technology, functions, and features. And so this, like I said, this one, if you have an enduro bike, we don't offer these, we don't sell these, because this just ends up being functions that can clutter up an enduro bike. On the motocross bikes, they use this only to manage everything. And we have these available. If you thought that you wanted to add this to your bike, you can send us an email and we can get you set up with one of these, or you can probably look on the Athena website and get more information and see some videos about how this works. But this is not really that widely adapted on the enduro side. So that's kind of a soup to nuts overview of every single function on the GET ECU system and platform, as well as the generational changes and improvements over time as this system has evolved and become more modern. So if you have any questions about the ECU system itself, any of the parts, accessories, if you want to add or change anything to your bike, or just any questions about your Austrian or Honda RL motorcycle that we have fitments and service for, please reach out to us. You can hit us up on email or send us a call or a text. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.